The Property Rights of Spouses Act. Property and creditors. So in that case, if you borrow money from the bank would be the creditor and you would be the debtor. Section 17. Provisions relating to creditors. Subsection 1. Subject to the provisions of this Act. A. Secured or unsecured creditors of a spouse. So secured loan is where you offer up some collateral, some property, and agree that if you can't pay the loan, then they will send a bailiff to capture that property and sell it. Unsecured would be higher interest loan like credit card and maybe high interest loan by those loan sharks. Unsecured loan, very high interest loan. So secured or unsecured creditors of a spouse shall have the same rights against that spouse and any property owned by that spouse as if this act had not been enacted. So in that case, your spouse, your wife, your husband, they owe the bank money. The bank wants back their money. They cannot tell the bank that they're married now. So you are making money. You're making more money and you're well off. So stop pressuring me. Here. See my spouse there. Go and pressure him or go and pressure her for the money. So they can't do that. Right? So it doesn't make a difference. The fact that you're married or not married, you still owe them their money. Alright. B. Property which, if this act were not enacted, would have been administered under the Bankruptcy Act by the trustee in bankruptcy, on the bankruptcy of a spouse shall be so administered. So your spouse is bankrupt, that bankruptcy is their responsibility. Right? And they must pay up what they owe. Alright. 2. The value of property that may be divided between the spouses shall be ascertained by deducting from the value of the property owned by each spouse. So they add up your property that you own and your spouse's property, add them together, then subtract. So deducting from that value, A, any secured or unsecured debts other than personal debt or debt secured wholly by property owed by one spouse. So any money that you owe other than personal debts or debt secured wholly by property, I guess that would be the family property secured by for example, the family home was used as collateral for a loan. Or B, the unsecured personal debt owed by one spouse to the extent that such debts exceed the value of any property of that spouse. So they owe a large sum of money, exceed the value of any property of that spouse. Okay. So they subtract that from the amount owed. If you owe $1 million and your spouse owe, if you, or in that case, let me look again. Divide between the spouses. The value of property may be divided between the spouses shall be ascertained by deducting from the value owned by each spouse. You own $1 million and your spouse owns $1 million too. That's $2 million. Then they subtract the $300,000 that you owe, or your spouse owe. Right? The unsecured personal debt owed by one spouse to the extent that such debt exceed the value of any property of that spouse. So exceed the $1 million. They owe $1.3 million. So the 2 million minus 1.3 million leaves $700,000. So the value of the property may be divided between the spouse shall be ascertained. So the court will subtract that money to get $1.3 million and divide up the 1.3. So if you own $1 million, your spouse owns $1 million, that's $2 million. They subtract the $1.3 million that one spouse owes the bank. That's $700,000 left. That seems to be what that is saying. And divide up the $700,000. Alright. 3. Where any secured or unsecured personal debt of one spouse is paid out of property owned by both spouses, the court may, on a division of that property, order that. Alright, so secure or unsecured personal debt of one spouse is paid out of property owned by both spouses. So if you both own $2 million and one spouse pays the debt of, say, $300,000, that's 1.7 million left. The court may, on division of that property, order that the share of the other spouse in that property be increased proportionally. Oh, so the value of the property has dropped from $2 to $1.7 million because you paid $300,000 out of that debt. So that spouse's property with us, share would also drop. So the share of the other spouse in that property be increased proportionally. Okay? Because you're the one who owed that money and paid out. So that other spouse, if their share was $1 million, they would maybe increase to 1.3. So, or it could be that 1 million each. You pay 300,000 out of the 2 million total. So the total amount drops. So they increase the amount that the other spouse owes, or that the other spouse, they increase the share of the other spouse's property. It seems as if they're saying that you cannot just cause your spouse to lose share by you going to borrow money and paying back or paying out some loan somewhere. Alright, the first mentioned spouse pay compensation to the other spouse. So in that case, the first mentioned spouse, the share of that other spouse. Okay, so if you are the one who owe the money, that you pay compensation to the other spouse. Alright, section 4. In subsection 2 and 3, personal debt means a debt incurred by either spouse other than a debt incurred A. by both spouses jointly, or B. in the course of a joint venture carried on by both spouses, whether or not any other person with any other person, or C. for the purpose of effecting improvements to the family home or acquiring, repairing, or effecting improvements to the family chattels, or B. for the benefit of both spouses or any relevant child in the course of managing the affairs of the household, or for caring for the relevant child, as the case may be. We'll look at the rest of it in another video. But before we end, this chattle is a new word to me. I looked up the word chattel. It says in law, I looked up online, it is an item of property other than freehold land, including tangible goods, that's chattel's personal, and leasehold interest, that's chattel real. Chattel personal. Oh, so it's an item of property other than land. Okay. So here, another source here, it's the Merriam-Webster dictionary. The meaning of chattel. The meaning of chattel. Let's look at it. Definition of chattel. Let me just wait a few seconds until it loads up. It's an item of tangible, movable, or immovable property except real estate and things such as buildings connected with real property. These statutes do not apply to personal property. For chattels, an oral statement or donative intent plus delivery. Well, that's another meaning, but so it's actually property other than houses and or lands. Alright, so we'll continue with section 18 in the next video.